I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Oscar Isaac, who stars in the spectacular Moon Knight and also in Scenes from Marriage this season. Oscar, so much of this show, Moon Knight, for the audience is us trying to figure out and how to differentiate between reality and what's in Mark's head. And I imagine you also had to navigate this yourself, especially getting into the role. So, how much preparation did you need to really do before production and during production to enable you to authentically play this complicated character who's so tortured by his psyche?
Well, thanks for speaking with me today, Rob. Very much appreciate it. And yeah, and I appreciate that something, this mainstream and something from the MCU is being considered seriously as a real piece of work. I know that we all approached it with the same kind of mindfulness and passion and inspiration as anything that I've done. So yeah, I mean, as far as preparation, I mean, as I kind of delved into it and searched for my particular inspiration with it, I did see that it's patterns on patterns. This Moon Knight show in particular, not only from a story standpoint. And from a character standpoint, but even technically, the filming of this show was just it was difficult to understand just how complicated it was going to be, even just preparing for it. Until you're there and realizing that not only is it two separate characters, but sometimes I'd be playing two separate characters, watching the themselves in the past interacting as well. So in a way, the scene, for instance, in episode 5, where Stephen watches Mark from the past break down in front of his parents' house. And so Stephen's watching Mark, and then Stephen watches Mark turn into Stephen from the past.
Yeah.
Then Mark from the future watches Stephen from the Mark from the present watches Stephen from the present watching Mark from the past turn into Stephen from the past. And all that we shot on the same day. So it's like that kind of, and all of them have to have their very specific point of view, their emotional truth to what's happening in that moment, and also holding the entire story in one's mind to make to have it make sense and be telling a story. So that kind of twisting of the brain and figuring out, being very specific with each one and what's happening with each one. It was just such an incredible mountain to scale.
I know. You know what? Everyone that I've spoken to on this show, like, the DPs, Andrew and Gregory, Jeremy Slater, the directors, Stefania Chella, all of them, even May, all remarked to me that their highlight was just watching you do that transition and the switches and the little nuances, the flicker in the eye, the face, the posture. Um,
Mm.
and they were all amazed. Just as we were in the audience. So I mean, that does not look easy to achieve so authentically. So how was there any particular strategies that you had in mind in how you're
I
going to
did.
look?
I very much so. Yeah. Starting off, once I had a really, my way into this whole thing really was through Stephen, and that's the way that the script is written. You're with Stephen for 2 full episodes until Mark really shows up. Mark comes to the forefront in episode 3, but when I first came into it, I didn't want it to feel like hokey. I didn't want you to be so aware of Oscar, the actor, acting really hard. I wanted you to believe the character of Stephen just as a fully fleshed individual character. And so early on, I said I don't want to do the switching back and forth. We've seen people do that and they've done it well. I didn't want to do the classic Gollum scene.
Yeah.
It's already been done. And so I said, I want to separate them if we can. If we can shoot all of Steven's stuff, as much in sequential order as possible, and then on a separate week shoot Mark. And then that became, okay, well, at least can we definitely do it on a separate day? Shoot Mark separately from Steven. And as I started, as I think it was the first 2 months where we filmed that way, and then after those 2 months, I really felt like I started to understand Mark more as a fully three-dimensional character, and I became more confident between the two characters, and so I started to find myself being able to switch more easily between the two, and then we saw that actually it's so much more exciting when you feel that it's happening in real time than it being a VFX shot. So then I started finding even more, as I got more comfortable, then it was like, okay, how can we make this into something that happens in camera?
It's such an enormous risk, and the fact that it pays off, I just assume that you are super proud of being able to do that and having all this positive feedback about it. Um, do you think it's genius that Jeremy Slater decided to write the show to have the audience come into this with Stephen through his eyes? He's a more likable, relatable guy because Mark's complicated. So, did you appreciate that element of the show? And that obviously helped you as well, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think that that was an incredibly intelligent and risky, but such a smart way to go because it was reinventing the character of Stephen because Stephen in the comics, he's it's changed so much the way Stephen's been portrayed in the comics, and the idea of making him like a playboy billionaire, it just felt like that was not a very fresh take. So to make him this everyman, and not only that, then that inspired me to make him even more idiosyncratic and even more of a introvert. Perhaps a bit on the spectrum as far as social, not really having the social skills because of all of his blackouts and all of this in his past, but someone who's desperate to want to connect with people, and an opportunity to make a really indelible comic character, and then make that be the counterpoint to the more traditional dark, vigilante, tough guy character that is Mark, and that allowed me to kind of lean into those tropes a bit more because within that guy there's this, little Englishman.
Yeah, and I just loved I love the way you characterized Stephen. It wasn't something that I expected. And in fact, I was watching it with my kids and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know Oscar Isaac was British." I'm like, "No, he's not. He's just really good at the accent." But it wasn't just the accent; it was all the little facial tics. It was his cadence, which is very different to Mark's. Mark has his own accent; it's not your accent.
Right.
So those. Where did that inspiration come from? Like I read that you were. I mean, I want you to answer this, but I've read some of the responses, which are actually quite amusing.
Yeah, with Mark, I wanted to give him a bit of the Chicago, but not overdo it, but just kind of lace that in a little bit, and then have him speaking a bit more from his chest, and so there's a bit more deeper resonance. And with Stephen, the first thing I started thinking about was Idiot Abroad because I just love Carl Pilkington so much, and just the idea of someone that finds himself in weird circumstances and strange places and has very humorous reactions to it, but he's not making jokes. It's his actual reaction to these things. He doesn't know he's being funny, and I liked that dynamic, and I felt like that's a dynamic I haven't seen in the Marvel universe, and so that kind of started getting me going down that road. And then I thought, all right, well, and Carl, and it's set in London. Carl has a more of a northern accent, but I was like, well, where could we set it from London? He's living in Brixton, but I still think he's Jewish, and so started listening to accents from Enfield and Northeast London and. Different comics like that, Russell Kane, but like The Office is in my DNA, like the English Office, and that type of comedy is something that I love so much, and so it felt like this was I could kind of play with some of that a bit. And then I was also watching Love on the Spectrum, that show, which I just found so moving. Because these, it's people that have all the same feelings we have, but they just haven't built up these social masks to hide it all, and so it's more honest, and so there was something about that I liked, adding that feeling to Stephen, and then it was just about finding where, once I started putting on the clothes, and we talked about the kind of clothes that he could wear, and finding I started playing with the posture of someone that I imagined him being like a very tall person that doesn't want to be tall.
Yeah.
Someone that like, yeah, that comes into a room and is a bit embarrassed that they're as tall as
Yeah.
they are, is like that kind of vibe. So yeah, that's where that characterization came from.
And you're able to pepper in some really funnier moments, light-hearted moments. So, for example, on the barge, this is life or death, and he's hitting something for a six and wanted to put in a cricket reference. I thought that was so funny. That's exactly what someone from that part of England would do. So I
Well,
just
that
wanted
a lot of
to,
that stuff, I think that one in particular, I owe it to Simon, the AD, because we had a lot of great English
yeah,
crew, and so I was like, "What's a cricket reference?" And I was like, "I don't want to say four like golf, like what?" He's like, "Yeah, do cricket," and I was like, "Yeah, say six." I was like, "Great, I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna say."
yeah. We all of us are Commonwealth people. We knew exactly what you were talking about, and we thought it was very funny.
Great.
So episode 5, you reference that. That's a great change of pace. It's in the asylum, and then of course, and with Towerette, and then of course we see the flashbacks. You mentioned how powerful they were. The MCU doesn't get a lot of credit for the really highly emotional, beautifully written scenes that it does in Loki and WandaVision, and of course now Moon Knight. So that was super powerful. I was really surprised that we were going there with this guy. Does that kind of thing resonate with you personally, perhaps maybe even after production, or is it something that you can easily let go of and shed once production's over?
Well, no, being a producer on this show, and really being a very active producer on it, meaning that I was involved so much with post production as well, and how we released it to the press, and I was really brought in a really beautifully collaborative way by everybody at Marvel. And so no, I was really involved with all of that, and it stuck. It stayed with me, and it is an investigation of trauma and about the things that we've done and the way that we've adapted to survive, and coming to terms with some of those adaptations and realizing that perhaps we don't need those anymore. They've served us, and we can say thank you, and those go away, and then we evolve into a new, hopefully a form of integration within ourselves. And so that I found incredibly, I resonated with that very much, and also in the early days, I really pushed for that to be the core of the show. That we really find what that trauma is and take it very seriously, and that's something that, to Muhammad's credit, he really pushed for taking that risk of actually making the thing that occurred after our research with DID. It has to be something. I mean, doesn't have to be, but for the most part, it is caused by sustained trauma at a very young age. So it's not just like something horrible happened and suddenly, this one horrible thing happened and then, he split into all these different alters. It's something that in order to survive long-term abuse, and often it's of a sexual nature, and it's usually somebody that's close to the family. And so deciding it's the mother, and then finding ways of doing it. The moment when she reaches for the belt, that we found on set. I said she should. She walked in. I was like, what if she reaches for the belt? And we did one with and one without, because Muhammad even was like, I think that might be too much. But again, it's sometimes just the implications, without actually seeing it, the imagination fills in the rest, and it can be, very dark. So it was important to not shy away from the reality of what that trauma is.
Just you talking about it, I'm getting that feeling again. It's like a visceral feeling that this show was really good at eliciting in its audience, because we all have a relationship with trauma and mental illness in some way, whether it's someone we love
Yeah.
or it's ourselves.
Yeah.
And for many of us, that was our way in on this series as well. And I, again, wasn't expecting that. I just wanted to have a lot of fun. I thought it was going to be really, just another great superhero show, and then we're done. No, this was way more than that, which I loved. There's a real sensitivity in the way DID is portrayed,
Yeah.
authentically and honestly, and in a really compelling way. And obviously, as a producer, and you're the guy playing the role, you must have been specifically conscious of getting those aspects right. And what's been the feedback so far? Have you heard that people are really appreciating how it came off the screen?
I have. You know, I've heard from quite a few systems actually. You know, which is the term for people with DID and the system that holds the altars, and they feel really seen and represented specifically, and then also people that don't necessarily have dissociative identity disorder, but have suffered different traumas through their life, different battles with mental health. That we could use a platform this massive to tell a story about that. I think that I've been very moved by some of those responses and really gratified, because that was the goal. That more than anything for me, it was like, if we're going to talk about this, then we have to make the whole thing really about that. And even the wilder elements, the fantasy elements, are we should be able to connect them so that they can be seen as symbols for the internal struggle that's happening. And in some ways, we tried to push it more. And, there was like a great scene at the end of 6 that just didn't quite fit in the rhythm of it. And, that was one scene that, for me would have tied in Mother and Amit a little closer, because that's also why I came up with this Laters Gators thing, because then she says after a while crocodile, and so for me that's like she said crocodile, she was the crocodile goddess that's saying, I wish I could prejudge you, because you would never have, this never would have happened. So for me it was really important, even if the audience doesn't get it literally, that there's some even subtextual emotional connection to everything that's happening.
But you seem to do that all the time, Oscar. Like, if I may say, some of your roles over the last 10, 15 years, I remember when you were in Ballabo, it's an Aussie film that many people probably haven't seen. You played Jose Ramos Porta. Like, that was incredible work. And then, of course, your work with Alex Garland, and obviously on Star Wars, my kids think you're amazing because of, your work as Poe. So you kind of tapped into a lot of different audiences, and obviously you do some beautiful work. In kind of more art house work, like Scenes from Marriage. And then, of course, you can switch over. I read this quote from you. I thought it was so funny. But you said that you were worried that you're going to be in a suit on set, thinking, "What the hell am I doing with my life?" I think that's brilliant. That's how I imagine you are, because of all your work. So obviously, you got over that pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I did. I think once I made the decision, and once I really felt that this was a real creative partnership with Marvel and with Mohammed and with Ethan Hawke and with May, then I got really excited about seeing the way we were working and what we were doing together, and I couldn't help but be 100% in and try to bring everything to the table that I could to make it something that was inspiring.
Yeah, and so now I'm sure you get this all the time, but you are Moon Knight now. The current iteration, that's you, and I know that you don't have the same kind of contract with MCU like other actors do, but if there's a chance that we can get to see more Moon Knight, are you in 100%? Are you maybe? What's the story?
I mean, I love the character, and like I said, I really did enjoy my collaboration with Marvel. So if there was a really interesting take on a story, I'm all ears.
Okay, well that's what we want to hear, because I think that we need more now.
I'm so pleased that you enjoyed it so much. Yeah, really.
Yeah, we really did. I'm sure you hear this all the time, and also with Scenes from a Marriage, man, that was really, really challenging to sit through, because a lot of that actually relates to many of us who are married or who have partners, and that's a lot of people. What was the highlight working with Jessica Chastain on that set? Because that was the writing itself is so amazing, but the performances is what really seems to stick with most of us.
Yeah. That was just complete synchronicity with someone else. That was a real, unusual, wild, uncanny experience where it was this dance with this other performer, someone I know so well for such a long time, and we completely synchronized, so that we didn't have to talk about it, we didn't have to even rehearse it, we didn't have to do much. We just had to get in the room and live out these scenarios and do these long 30-minute takes without cutting. So it was this weird hybrid between TV theater and film, because it had this intimacy of film. It had the long form of television, and it had the actual form of filming these scenes, like 30-minute takes. It was like doing theater. So it was really wild.
It's amazing. Well, look, everything you do, Oscar, I'm there. I love it. And congrats on some great work. Moon Knight really blew us all away, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the red carpet at the Emmys.
I appreciate you saying that, Rob.